Welcome back, everyone, to a brand new Cabral concept. Today, we are going to be going over another case study. This time, we're going over the at-home lab test. Again, that's accessible to anyone in the world, called the infertility test, or simply the fertility test, sometimes called the women's fertility test. And again, we can link that up for you, but this is something that you're able to run with your local naturopathic doctor, functional medicine doctor, or integrative health practitioner level 2. And what they can do is they can help you assess why you may not have a regular cycle, so menstruation-wise, or if you're moving more towards menopause, premenopause as well. So this is really helpful for obviously fertility, but really healthy menstrual-based cycles, and then moving into menopause as well. So let's take a look at it here today. This is not dissimilar to the stress, mood, and metabolism test that I've shown you in the past. And I'll link everything up today, really simple, really straightforward, at stephencabral.com/2309. stephencabral.com/2309. You can actually download this redacted lab, so there's no client information on this, meaning like their personal information. And you'll also see previous case studies. I'll link to those. And I'll also link to the regular stress, mood, and metabolism test in case you're a male or you're someone who doesn't necessarily want to run this lab, although a male could actually run this lab to look at their luteinizing hormone and follicle stimulating hormone that we'll be talking about here today. So I just want you to know, again, we're going to take it from the top, but everything has an underlying root cause, meaning every wellness-based issue you're dealing with, health-based issue, and yes, infertility being one of those, whether it be weight gain, weight loss, or aging-based issue, there's always an underlying root cause. The goal is to be able to discern what of the 6, 7, 8, 10 things that it could possibly be, and narrow that down to maybe 1, 2, or 3. And then you begin to work those variables as to how to improve them. As you improve the underlying root cause, well, then the body becomes healthy. When the body becomes healthy, dis-ease can no longer exist. That is what we need to begin to understand as a society, as a culture, and really move away from all of the reductionist, conventional medicine-based dogma of a pill for every ill. Why don't we figure out why the ill came about in the first place so that we can then be able to figure out, okay, let's look at the imbalances. Let's fix those so they not only cause the imbalance I'm dealing with, but the many that will come in the future as well. That's why one medication leads to 2, which leads to 4, which leads to 8. And then you're on a cocktail, a whole handful of medications by the time you're in your 50s and 60s. I don't want that for you. I was that person myself at age 17 through about 27. I got off all the medications once I was able to deal with and work on the underlying root causes. Of course, you know my story. I'm happy to say now I'm healthier than I've ever been many, many, many years later. And I simply want to share that with others as well. All right, so let's dive into this lab. One of the reasons why and we'll go right to this. This is a female, age 38 years old, pre-menopause. And we always like this lab run during the luteal phase of a woman's cycle. So if you're dealing with any menstruation-based issues, a lack of a period, irregular period, or you're dealing with even hormonal-based fluctuations, or maybe even weight gain, difficulty losing weight, poor circulation, cold hands and feet, this is a lab that you can absolutely run. And so here's what we want to look at. Your estrogen levels. We want to look at specifically this lab's using a 43 to 180. And we use different parameters as well for the stress, mood, and metabolism. But the bottom line is this. When we're looking at our overall estrogen levels, they should be a little lower during the luteal phase. That means anywhere on this lab, at the maximum, we really want to see them at maybe an 85. So we want that to be in range. That looks pretty good. The problem, though, is that even though estrogen can be fairly normal, and again, we talk about this all the time, this actual person, this wellness client, is what's called estrogen dominant. And you might say, well, that seems impossible because their estrogen is at the low end of normal. So how could I be possibly estrogen dominant when I'm on the low end of normal? Well, the reason is this, is that their progesterone is so low when it should be in the higher range during the luteal phase that this person gets all of the symptoms of high estrogen. Maybe an irregular period, maybe water retention, maybe weight gain, maybe bloating, maybe skin like acne-based issues, low mood, irritability during the last 7 to 10 days of their period. And again, this is because this person is not producing enough progesterone. Really important. That's why, again, this lab tells you, oh, it's not that I'm producing too much estrogen, it's that I'm producing too little progesterone. And we'll get to why that is in just a moment. So during the luteal phase, days 19, 20, 21 is when we run this lab, but the luteal phase is basically days 15 through 28 of a woman's cycle, if it's a 28-day cycle. And you can see that the ratio of progesterone to estrogen is low. We already know that just by looking at it. Progesterone is just too low. We need to fix that. For their testosterone, it's pretty good. There's really nothing wrong with this person's testosterone levels. Because we would like those levels within the, I would say, low end of normal. So this is normal, 34, 30 to basically 60 would be good for someone in this particular condition they're dealing with. Sex hormone binding globulin, well, we don't want this on the higher side. If someone is not making enough of their estrogen and progesterone, we certainly don't want a hormone that's going to bind up more of those hormones largely available in the blood. If these are going to be low, well, I certainly want then sex hormone binding globulin to be a little lower as well. I'll go over that on a previous a future podcast just on sex hormone binding globulin because it affects both men and women. So I'm going to do a whole show on it. Now, this person's DHEA is a little on the lower side. Why is that an issue? If DHEA is low, you're going to have lower levels of what? Well, everything that comes below DHEA. What falls below DHEA? Testosterone. Okay, well, that's on the lower side. Progesterone. That's certainly on the other side of testosterone, but you need strong DHEA and you need strong estrogen and testosterone in order to be able to satisfy the progesterone pathway. So not enough DHEA is going to lead to low hormones. We need to get this level up. We want this on this particular lab right around that mid-range, okay? So really, really important that we're basically going to double this person's DHEA naturally so that we can produce more of the hormones that the body needs to produce. Now, let's just jump for 1 second. Very interesting. If we look at this person's cortisol levels, their morning cortisol should be between a 6 and a 9. It's a 13.2. That's high. That's off the chart, right? It's in the red. This chart's only going up to 9.5. They're off this chart. So that means they're waking up with incredible stress. Now, it's our job as practitioners to say, why does this person have such a high cortisol awakening response? Is it a drop in blood sugar? Is it a spike in blood sugar? Is it a high amount of anxiety and stress starting the day? What is going on with this client? All I know is this is an individual that should not be fasting and skipping breakfast. This is an individual that can start their fast earlier the night before. Maybe they started at 5 or 6 at night, but they're going to stop their fast about an hour or so after waking, meaning like they're going to get some food into their system to calm those cortisol levels. Okay, that's how you can use at-home lab testing to figure out how long your fasting period should be. Okay, they have a normal cortisol around lunch, then it spikes back up again in the evening. Why? I don't know. Did they have a cup of coffee mid-afternoon? Was there a higher level of stress? Did they get stress with the whole family coming home? Did they get stress on the way back from work? Did they do an afternoon workout? I'm going to talk with them. I'm going to ask them, what's going on? Why is there high cortisol at the night? And then we have a high cortisol before bed. It may not look high, but it's high. You want your cortisol in the evening before bed, a 0.6 or lower. And when the whole chart is 0.4 to 1, 0.6 is high enough. So this individual, without a doubt, is going to have difficulty turning off their mind. They're going to have difficulty producing more serotonin, which is the happy, feel-good neurotransmitter. They're going to have more difficulty producing melatonin at night. So that means say goodbye to a lot of deep sleep, say goodbye to that REM sleep. There's too much stress going on. But guess what? Now we know why this person has lower levels of progesterone. If you have higher levels of cortisol, 9 out of 10 times we see in our practice, and we run tens of thousands of labs, this person is going to have low progesterone. So certainly we're going to use some progesterone support in the meantime, probably some DHEA, but really what we're going to do is we're going to use full spectrum magnesium and adrenal soothe and most likely some sleep help support to get this person turning off that cortisol at night, right? So lunchtime, adrenal soothe, most like a little magnesium. Dinner time, adrenal soothe, some magnesium. Before bed, some sleep help support, a little bit of DHEA, and maybe some progesterone support here as well. How long do you use these things? Usually 12 to 16 weeks. You're going to retest. Things are going to be going well, and then you'll begin to wean off with your practitioner. But there's more, because this isn't just a stress hormones, mood, and metabolism test. You're also looking at luteinizing hormone and follicle stimulating hormone. Just a little aside on what these are, if you've never heard about these before. Well, I have a nice little chart that I'm going to show you in a moment, because if you're watching this on video, well, of course, it's going to make a little bit more sense, but I'm going to explain the whole thing as well. Luteinizing hormone and follicle stimulating hormone are produced in both men and women in the gonads. So the ovaries, so I'll get to that in just a moment. They work on, I should say, the ovaries in women and the testes in men. They are produced by the essentially anterior pituitary gland, but your hypothalamus tells them, your pituitary gland inside your brain, what to do. So you might have heard me say the HPA axis before. That's the hypothalamus pituitary adrenal axis. You might have heard me talk about the thyroid axis before, called the hypothalamus pituitary thyroid axis. Now, again, why does this matter? Why am I talking about it? It's because your brain gets feedback from your body as to what hormones, or at least hormone precursors, it should produce. And it's the same thing with this. So it's called the hypothalamus pituitary gonad or gonadal axis. And what happens is, and this is how it should work in women, is that right around day 1 or so of your period of menstruation, progesterone levels have dropped, estrogen levels are going to start to rise, and luteinizing hormone, follicular stimulating hormone begin to rise, namely follicle stimulating hormone. So follicle stimulating hormone begins to rise, and it begins to affect what? Well, it begins to affect the actual ovary. So it's telling, like, listen, we need to develop, we need to improve, we need to mature this ovary, or this egg that is going to be released. So why does that matter? Well, right around day 14, we get a spike of luteinizing hormone and a spike of follicle stimulating hormone. What does that do? Well, that's going to allow ovulation to take place. That's going to release that egg. Now, again, why does that matter? Well, here's what's going to happen next. Estrogen now is going to drop, and it's supposed to drop. Let me just show you this little chart. So we have over here our chart. Again, if you're watching this on video, if not, no problem, I'm going to take you through it. Let's start at the bottom. See how progesterone is a flat yellow line all the way through day 14. Why? Because during the follicular phase, that's the first 14 days, women are producing more estrogen than progesterone. That is normal, and it works in unison with follicle stimulating hormone. Now, what's going to happen is around day 14, it could be day 13 for women, 14, 15, 16 for women, but right around that mid-cycle, you're going to get the release of that mature egg. And that is going to cause, well, that's part of ovulation. So now as you are moving through ovulation, you see now estrogen begin to drop and progesterone begin to increase. Now, right around days 19, 20, 21 is when we would run a lab like this, because that's going to be peak progesterone and your lowest estrogen, okay? So that is why we run that right around day 19 or 20. And the reason, again, we're doing that is that at that point, we should see progesterone at its highest level and estrogen right around its lowest level. Now, at the same time, if we know our hormones, we see that luteinizing hormone is picked up, okay, a little bit in that luteal base phase, the last 14 days, and follicle stimulating hormone has basically leveled off. Okay, so now what would happen though if we were to see a lab like this and we saw higher levels of luteinizing hormone and higher levels of follicle stimulating hormone? Okay, so as a practitioner, you are then sharing with your client the reason why you have higher levels of luteinizing hormone and follicle stimulating hormone is because there is not a feedback loop going on to your hypothalamus to then tell your pituitary gland to produce less of them. And why would that be happening? The reason that is happening, at least in this individual, is because there's a higher level of cortisol, a higher level of stress hormones, which is then decreasing namely progesterone-based production. If there is a decrease in progesterone-based production, we know that the corpus luteum, which is essentially left, that's what's left after ovulation takes place, which produces more progesterone, is not getting the proper signals. If we're not getting the proper signals, and this goes on long enough, then a woman loses her menstrual cycle. She can get it back, but she needs to fix the underlying root causes. If you lose your menstrual cycle, or it's irregular, or you're not producing enough progesterone because of cortisol, and I have no idea why more fertility-based specialists are not looking at this, you're not going to be able to get pregnant, or if you do, you're not going to be able to carry that baby for that full first trimester when progesterone is so important. So again, this is just really crucial. This is why we want to teach these things. We teach them inside of our Integrative Health Practitioner Level 2 to other practitioners, but also health coaches that want to learn this, and that goes for anybody who wants to learn this. You're welcome to learn this. But that is the reason. The other reason why luteinizing hormone or follicle stimulating hormone can be higher in women is that, again, the lower hormone production, that's one, but that also happens as a woman is moving into menopause. In my opinion, this woman at 38 years old is probably a little too young to be moving into menopause. That's not just my, I shouldn't say that, that's not my opinion. I would say that that's too young an age, but it does happen to women. And the reason it happens to women is many of the reasons that I just spoke about. A lack of progesterone being produced. Estrogen's typically normal. Again, this individual has below normal estrogen, which is actually normal, again, if we're looking at the chart, normal to be low during this phase of the cycle. So the issue almost always, I will say 9 out of 10 cases, goes back to progesterone. Sometimes it's also low estrogen. There's no doubt about it. I'm not saying that that doesn't happen. It's just not as common. It's also why, we run these labs and you have these labs available to you. So the nice thing is this is fairly easily correctable, typically 12 to 16 weeks maximum. You can re-regulate this cycle. And again, you need a couple times to move through a normal menstrual cycle, but that's absolutely the goal. The last part of this lab looks at your thyroid. I'm not going to go over this too in depth. I've done that on the stress hormones metabolism test. And besides the fact that this person has normal thyroid function. So thyroid is not leading to dysregulated cycle, which sometimes it can, but this person has a perfectly normal thyroid based numbers. Free T4 looks good. It's between a 1 and a 2. Free T3 should be between a 3 and a 4 on this lab. And TSH should always be between a 0.5 and a 2. And the TPO antibodies are low. So again, this person, we really figured out the main issue here, high levels of stress. Why does this person have high levels of stress? That's what we need to speak to them about. Could be gut issues, could be inflammation, could be pain, could be mental, emotional, trauma-based. It could be even over-exercise and fasting for too long. But again, we'll figure that out by speaking with the individual. But we do know, again, why luteinizing hormone is elevated. We know why follicle stimulating hormone is elevated. And now we can understand, really, this goes back to cortisol affecting progesterone, but also long-term stress. This person's DHEA is too low. Next thing you know, we'll probably see this testosterone start to fall as well. So hopefully this case study was helpful. I do like to get a little bit more advanced with these, but they really all build off of each other. And the truth is that you don't need to necessarily know how to read this lab. You can certainly learn how to read these labs through ihp.coach. That's just the website, integrativehealthpractitioner.org. But also, you can simply work with a practitioner. If this doesn't interest you, just know that it's available. My goal is to simply let you know that it's available. You can work with an Integrative Health Practitioner Level 2 by just going to ihp.coach and then just click on the practitioners tab to find an Integrative Health Practitioner Level 2, or you can work with your local naturopathic doctor. They should be able to run this lab for you. And of course, you can always work with us over at Equalife if you choose to as well. Totally your choice. I just want you to know that these are available to you. And again, information really is power. And once you start to see this, you can begin to know what your underlying root causes are, how you can correct those, and it really gives you hope. And that's what I needed when I was a young kid, and that's what we try to provide to other people as well. So take care, everyone. Do feel free to share this with anyone you believe it could serve. And of course, I'll be back tomorrow with a brand new Cabral concept.